Let's begin by telling you that the federal government of Nigeria has announced the commencement of demolition for the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road project. This is according to the Federal Comptroller of Works in Lagos State, Korede Keisha. Keisha revealed that notices have been issued to residents residing within the designated right-of-way, urging them to take necessary actions ahead of the demolition process. This ambitious project aims to connect Lagos to Cross River, spanning a distance of 700 kilometers and crossing through several states. With an estimated cost of 15 trillion naira, the road is poised to transform transportation infrastructure in the region. The first phase of demolition, targeting properties within the initial 3 kilometers, is set to commence this Saturday. And now joining me to discuss this is a public affairs commentator, Dr. Jide Johnson. Dr. Johnson, it's nice to have you around on the news.
And good day to our viewers all over the world. Thank you for having me.
Okay, now, despite several pleas by people and businesses that these projects will affect, the Nigerian government has announced the demolition of obstructing structures. Now, when you take a kaleidoscopic view of this project, do the overall benefit outweigh the possible drawback?
There's no doubt that we need the corridor that links the coastal line of Nigeria together in terms of moving goods and services and in terms of to fast-track economic development. There's no doubt that we need that type of road beyond the one we are having connecting Lagos and Calabar. I recall the one that Shagari was trying to do during the Botched Second Republic, connecting Lagos via Ilaro down to Sokoto State through that corridor too. And I think government should look into that direction. We should have a road network beyond the Lagos-Ibadan Express, which is the major Trunk A road which we have. However, the question is the approach and is the timing of this project by government. You may question that, but on the need for it, I can tell you that we have serious need for different roads connecting different parts of this country. You recall that during the First Republic, why the economy was able to grow, being an agrarian economy then, was the railway network connecting the major cities in Nigeria together. And since then, we have not had a comprehensive transportation system connecting the coastal end of Nigeria. Don't forget, the railway got to Calabar, got to Enugu, got to Port Harcourt. That's to tell you the importance of road network and road infrastructure to economic development.
Okay, so let's look at the downside now. The beach resorts that will be affected along the mapped route is valued at over $200 million. It is said to be home to over 80 businesses and provides more than 4,000 jobs, generating about 2 billion naira. That's about $1.5 million in annual tax revenue. Now, as a government, because you talked about the approach, now as a government, would it be wise to lose such an existing job creation initiative and revenue stream for a project that you are not even sure when it will be completed?
Well, the federal controller for works, Lagos State, and I listened to a press briefing. I listened to it 3 times to grasp what she said. They were in a hurry. I don't know why government would be in a hurry to complete the project. Now, if you have a corridor and she said the concern is the first 3 kilometers. Now, why are you in a hurry to construct the first 3 kilometers? If that's a difficult corridor, why don't you start with corridors that are simpler for you to start? Why don't you start with corridor there are no businesses from? Today, Lagos is in charge of the federal government. Tomorrow, Lagos might not be in charge of federal government. And I want it to be noted by everybody. There is the ownership of the coastal, because she was providing some details with respect to federal government being the owner of the coastal road, given a certain percentage. I think it was through a decree, either under Babangida administration or Abacha administration. And I knew Lagos State government resisted it, and most of the state with coastal areas resisted that land grab by federal government. If federal government could not grab lands that extended to the desert, why should federal government be coming to grab lands, coastal lands that belong to the state? However, that's a decree that is part of the constitution, and it's left for the Supreme Court to decide on that. But as far as I'm concerned, we could have left the 0 to 3 kilometers, the starting point, and start from 5 kilometers upward, where you don't have to do any demolition, and give this business some time, some gestation period through which they can relocate their businesses and they can minimize their losses. But as far as I'm concerned, you look at what she said, it was more or less like the government is more interested in demolition. She was talking, I listened to it 3 times, she was talking as if she's in a military regime and demolition, we demolish this, we do that, forgetting the fact that this is a democracy, and in democracy, you want to get as many people as possible involved in government, having a buy in government. The optics, you might do it in the interest of larger public interest. What about the optics? What about the optics of doing it? I'm not too sure that the optics favor the government in terms of just coming out, demolishing businesses. Well, in actual sense, if the major concern is 3 kilometers, for heaven's sake, why do you have to destroy businesses worth $200 million?
Interesting.
Employ more than 4,000 people, and then paying taxes to the government? I don't know. You just demolish that and you are going to compensate. Oh my goodness. For me, it's the approach. The project is needed and it is necessary.
Yeah, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson, it's quite interesting that this particular project will be going down this way, and some people have actually thrown a twist into it. Now, some economists have even argued that why expend that much, talking about trillions of naira that will be going into this project on a coastal highway at this time when majority of Nigerian roads are impassable. And some economists have said that it is even a misplaced priority in the first place. So what do you think?
Well, the bottom line is that there's a need, except you have not experienced congestion on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. That's the only trunk A road out of Lagos. If you are going to Calabar from Lagos, you have to Ringma Road. There's the need for us to have a road network. I've said it. I've said it that the one Lagos to Calabar is needed. The one from Ilaro to Sokoto on that corridor, Ogun State, Oyo State, Kwara State, through Niger, down. I think it was Shagari administration that envisaged that particular project, that conceptualized that project, and that project has been abandoned. So as far as I'm concerned, we can borrow money to build the project, not to put it in private pockets. We can borrow money for now and enjoy it, and we pay for it in the future. Those of us that are alive now will enjoy the project, and those that are alive, they'll be alive in the future, 50, 60 years from now, we also benefit from the project and they'll pay for the project. The important thing is sincerity of government. People have lost faith and hope in government with respect to government intention to doing project. Let me quickly add this. You recall the present administration at the federal level was responsible for Lekki Expressway. That was why the toll was brought after Ozuba and Badiwe, and then at Eleganza. And I can tell you what has happened to that project. So the lack of public trust tends to make a lot of people being skeptical when government comes up with this project. They usually associate it with the White Elephant project.
Okay. So lastly, before I let you go in about 30 seconds, I'd just like to get your reaction because you actually criticized the approach of government. So at this time that the government has put its foot down and said that this is what it's going to do, what do you think at least the Nigerian government can do to mitigate the impact? Because we had a town hall meeting yesterday with people saying that it's going to affect their businesses, their homes will be gone and all that. So now that the government has said this is what it's going to do, what do you think it can do to actually mitigate the effect on them?
I think what the government should do is to start from 4 kilometers upward. Leave the 3 kilometers, give them some time, let them look for ways to relocate their businesses, move their asset. You don't have to embark on demolition. That's my approach. At least people can still recover their business and reduce and minimize their losses. That's what I think should be done. Okay. Beyond that, mobilizing people for demolition and destroying people's businesses, it does not just make any sense.
Okay. Dr. Jide Johnson, thank you so much for your time on the news.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll move on now. Nigeria's House of Representatives Joint Committees on Environment, Climate Change, Petroleum Upstream and Petroleum Downstream have begun its investigation on the impact of oil production on oil-producing communities. The probe, according to the House, is aimed at addressing the concerns of environmental degradation raised by host communities. Edong Joseph reports.
Crude oil exploration began in Nigeria's Niger Delta region in 1958. However, while this has brought prosperity to the nation, it has come with attendant challenges of underdevelopment and poor environmental management. In an effort to correct the mistakes of the past, Nigeria's House of Representatives Joint Committee on Environment, Climate Change and Petroleum has commenced investigation into the effects of oil production on oil-producing communities.
We have to listen to the fears that are faced by the frontline communities, indigenous people, and marginalized groups who usually bear the brunt of environmental injustice.
Despite the laws and regulations enacted to safeguard our environment and the regulatory agencies of the government to establish to address these concerns, the environmental damage in oil-producing communities still persists unabated. It is therefore incumbent on us, as representatives of the people, to identify the erring organizations, hold those responsible, accountable, and take decisive action to mitigate the living condition of our communities.
35 oil-producing companies were invited. However, only 4 attended the hearing. The committee frowned at their absence, condemning their attitude, saying this poses a danger to communities in their zone of operations.
Even the caliber of those who are here today, I also think that the chief executives of the companies should also be here. Let us engage each other and agree on the way forward, because 2050 is roughly how many? 26 years away from this year, and also. And if we don't do something, I can assure you, what happened in Dubai will be a child's play.
The committee agreed to send summons to the chief executive officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Chevron Nigerian Limited, Total Energies, and several others. It adjourned its sitting to May the 8th to continue its investigation on the effects of oil production on the environment. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
In politics, a former deputy governor in Ondo State, Ajayi Agboola, has emerged as the candidate of the People's Democratic Party for the November governorship election in the state. Agboola polled 264 votes to defeat his closest rival, a former member of the House of Representatives, Kolade Akinjo, who got 157 votes at the party's primary held on Wednesday. No fewer than 7 aspirants contested the election, with 621 delegates accredited. Other results show that a former Secretary General of the Afenifere, Chief Shola Ebisheni, polled 99 votes. Adulu Akinwumi got 64 votes. Bamidele Akindoye scored 24. John Mafo polled 9, and Boson Ariboa had 2 votes. The candidate served as the deputy governor to the late Rotimi Akeredolu up until 2020, before he decamped to the PDP following moves to impeach him.
Agboola, having scored the highest number of votes, is hereby declared the winner of this primary and hereby declared the candidate of the People's Democratic Party for the November 2024 election, and is hereby returned as the candidate. Thank you and God bless.
Meanwhile, the stage seems set for the 2 former deputies of the late Rotimi Akeredolu, former governor of Ondo State, to slug it out in the November 16 governorship election. This follows the conclusion of the primary election of both APC and the PDP, with Agboola Ajayi, the former deputy governor to late Governor Akeredolu, emerging as the flag bearer of the party, as well as Lucky Ayedatiwa, the incumbent governor of Ondo State, also a former deputy to late Governor Akeredolu, emerging as the candidate of the ruling party in the state. Recall that Agboola dumped the APC in 2020 following impeachment moves against him. Earlier, we were joined by a political analyst, Taiwo Jumo, and he shared his thoughts on this development.
I think the perfect match. Both personalities are quite experienced. They've served in the second. They served as second citizen of the state. Under the same governor, that is the late Governor Akeredolu. So the fact that they are both experienced is casting stones. Yes, but the thing is that I think one will have an edge. There's no doubt about that. I've said this severally, that the power of incumbency is such that cannot be swept under the carpet. The current governor, Lucky Ayedatiwa, having served in the capacity of governor, has an edge. And of course, yes, the thing is, when Agboola Ajayi was deputy governor, there were a few times that his principal traveled, and so he had the opportunity to serve in acting capacity, and so he did a few things that will also count for him. But at the end of the day, what people want is good governance. What the people of Ondo State want is better economy, better security, and the like.
Critical stakeholders in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria have analyzed the country's leadership challenges and profiled solutions. They made their submissions at a public lecture in Ughelli, Delta State, south of Nigeria. News Central's correspondent Austin Azu completes the report.
Stakeholders from different states in the Niger Delta region have converged on this hall to examine the theme of the event, Youth Empowerment and Leadership Evolution, Rethinking Nigeria's Leadership Recruitment Process.
Advocates have become a platform that have given a lot of young men a starting point. Some of them who started yesterday are today renowned journalists within Nigeria and outside the shore of Nigeria.
The keynote speaker drew attention to the untapped potential of Nigeria's youth population, highlighted obstacles of this empowerment, marginalization, and lack of realistic opportunities for the youth in politics. In his analysis of the flaws in Nigeria's leadership recruitment and empowerment processes, Professor Ojaruge identified the enduring effects of colonialism, entrenched political interest, and limited opportunities as major culprits.
And that takes me immediately, as I mentioned, to the challenges to youth empowerment. What are the barriers? What are the obstacles? What are the strictures that have prevented youth from attaining empowerment? Because it is when they are empowered that they can now partake in the leadership recruitment process.
The discussion panel stressed the need to distribute blame equally among the youth, leadership, and society. They emphasized the importance of collaboration between the private and public sector in policy formulation and effective implementation.
We need to go back, start from our homes, teach our people, involve our children, our youth in whatever we are doing. By so doing, you empower them just walking away without you knowing you have done anything.
Maybe there's a problem with our leadership. And if we have a problem, how do we change it? The only way we can change is to now bring in people, recruiting young girls that are coming who take Nigeria very seriously. That is the only way. But if those people are banking on now to take over from the leaders, they don't think so about Nigeria, what happens? This is a big problem for everybody. When you talk about empowerment, for me, I believe that we should continue to reorient our youth.
Other discussants said for Nigeria to get its leadership right, there must be a deliberate policy to enthrone meritocracy above nepotism, tribalism, and corruption in the nation's electoral system, which undermines the leadership recruitment process. In Ughelli, Delta State, for News Central, Austin Azu.
Let's talk security now. Troops of the Nigerian army have dismantled their tents and withdrawn from communities in Niger State following the recent deadly ambush by terrorists, leading to the killing of 6 military personnel. 2 officers and 4 soldiers lost their lives last Friday in the Alawa community in the Shiroro local government area of the state during an ambush by terrorists. Following the withdrawal of the soldiers on Thursday, hundreds of residents, including women, children, and the elderly, have started vacating their homes and trekking several kilometers to safety. A resident said they were shocked to find the soldiers dismantling their tents ahead of withdrawal from the communities and called on the Niger State government to quickly intervene to avert any attack by the bandits. In the meantime, the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, has hinted at a possible relocation strategy following a harrowing incident at the Suleja Medium Security Custodial Center in Niger State. A staggering 105 inmates escaped during a daring jailbreak caused by the aftermath of a destructive rainstorm. During his visit to the facility, Tunji Ojo underscored the urgent need for action, citing President's concerns about urbanization encroaching upon correctional centers across the nation. The minister emphasized that this recent escape underscores the pressing need for relocation to ensure enhanced security, adequate space, and improved infrastructure within correctional facilities. Meanwhile, Samson Duza, spokesperson for the Federal Capital Territory Command of the Nigerian Correctional Service, provided updates on the situation, revealing that 119 inmates initially broke free, but security forces managed to recapture 14 of them. He added that authorities are working tirelessly to bring the remaining escapees to justice. And now to discuss this, of course, we'll be looking at these comprehensive reforms within Nigeria's correctional system. And to talk more about this is a public affairs analyst, Jide Ojo. Thank you so much, Jide Ojo, for joining us at this time on the news.
It's my pleasure. Good day.
Now, following the jailbreak in Suleja, what are your thoughts on the minister's proposal to relocate correctional facilities away from city centers? Do you believe that this is an effective solution to preventing future breakouts?
I don't think so. I think what needs to be done is rather to reinforce security around correctional centers. This contemporary times demand for things like CCTV camera, drones, scanners, and all manner of technological devices. Aside from the fact that our prisons or correctional centers are very old, some of them are colonial legacies. They are over 100 years old. So, and they have not undergone, appropriate maintenance. So it becomes very easy for these criminal elements to break free anytime there is a, natural disaster. Even when there is no natural disaster, we've seen series of jailbreaks in Kuje here in Abuja. We've seen in Kotokafe in Kogi. We've seen in Owerri. We've seen across several states. And you could see from the footage that is being shown that the work has not been concluded on the perimeter fencing of this facility, which is what enabled these people to be able to escape. And unfortunately, history tells us that once these criminal elements break free, it's very difficult to recapture them. The ones that broke free from Kuje Correctional Center 2 years ago, I'm not sure up to 20% of them have been captured back into the system. So we need to infuse technology. We need to strengthen the structure of correctional centers. Even a building that was built 20 years ago will need reinforcement from elements because, time and again, you find out that the integrity test of many buildings are no longer as efficient as when they were built, yes.
Okay, so let's also look at a particular concern that the Interior Minister highlighted. He mentioned the President's worry about urbanization affecting correctional facilities. So now, how can urban planning be improved to ensure both public safety and the security operation of prisons is optimal? Some people have actually questioned why a prison center or a jail space would be situated in a residential area.
What you don't seem to understand is that at the time many of these correctional centers were built, they were actually in isolated, out of reach places.
Okay.
As I told you, some of them were built over a century ago, some over 50 years ago. So development is actually well caught up with many of them. And does the government have resources to build or relocate this jail? Don't forget that jail correctional centers have been moved from exclusive legislative list to concurrent legislative list. So what we should demand of our state government is that they should also start embarking on building of correctional centers and make sure that they provide modern day technology in these centers so that offenses that are considered to be state offenses, like all this burglary, assault and battery, rape and all of that, offenders can then be taken to state facility. In other climes, I should shock you, in other climes, there are private individuals that actually set up correctional facilities that people rent to go serve their punishment. So it's something that can also be commercialized, or aspect of it can be commercialized. It's like when somebody is building hostels for schools, for students to hire. So government can also encourage private sector to help them build those correctional centers while they pay back over a period of time. So there are different models by which government can do this.
Okay.
And I think the latest being that now that there's constitutional alteration that have moved correctional center from the exclusive to concurrent legislative list, any correctional center that are going to be built right now should be appropriately located, and there should be technology infusion into the operations.
Okay.
It's high time to have CCTV camera across all our correctional centers, drones to monitor movement and all of that, and even to tag the criminal elements, whether you are awaiting trial or you are already a convict. There are monitoring things that you can use to monitor these individuals, so that even when they escape, it can be easy to recapture them.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Njide Ojo, for your contribution. We appreciate that. And we hope that the Nigerian government will take all these into consideration. Thank you. Moving on now. Telecommunications operators in the country, including MTN, Nigeria, and Globacom, have asked for the federal government's approval through the Nigerian Communications Commission to raise their tariffs. The development came after foreign exchange losses and rising energy costs forced some of the operators to post losses last year. The telco's proposal to raise their tariff came barely 24 hours after MultiChoice, a South African pay television company, raised its tariff. Several companies, including discos and brewing companies, have also raised their prices in recent times. Nigeria's federal government says that it has set an annual target of creating about 2.5 million jobs annually for citizens. This was made known by the Ministry of Labour and Employment in Abuja as it met with development partners, saying it intends to focus more on youth empowerment and skill acquisition initiatives. Marvelous Obomanu tells us more.
In attendance are senior officials of the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment and international development partners. Those present expressed their commitment to improving the lives of citizens by tackling poverty and unemployment.
Because if you look at the past, the ministry has been really much on the sidelines, hasn't done enough, I feel, for the labour and employment sector. So the fact that this initiative has even been created, and the energy that I am seeing around this initiative and people willing to drive it, I think we will start seeing some really impressive changes, especially it's in line with Mr. President's goals of driving it's 6 points of his 8 initiatives. So I think we will see some real change.
Officials from the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment also gave assurances that it will tackle current unemployment challenges, seeking to create about 2.5 million jobs annually.
The breakdown and the way we intend to do this is to do this directly and indirectly, not just going directly and creating these jobs by ourselves. We hope to do it through the people we empower, through the people we train. If we are doing the digital skills initiative, which basically looks to equip and empower people with digital skills, digital marketing, data analysis, and the rest of it. The global remote work is something that can scale a whole lot, because you can sit down here in Nigeria and provide services for organizations in Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. We are facing it in per quarter, right? Because we want to do it on a quarterly basis, and we are looking to do this 500,000 per quarter. Yes, directly and indirectly.
It's very doable. So it's obviously just creating the workforce that can help support the driver initiative. So I think it's very doable. Whether it's going to be done in a year, who knows? Maybe 6 months, maybe 2 years.
We are not going to take our jobs lightly, and we are not going to look at people who believe that they are occupying space shift, you will not shift, produce, you will not produce. So we are going to see a lot of changes, and there are going to be sanctions for people who are not delivering on their mandates.
The World Bank says the current poverty rate rose from 40% in 2018 to about 46% in 2024. It adds that this has increased the number of poor people in the country from 79 million to 104 million persons. To reduce the current unemployment rate in Nigeria, the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment has promised to give 2.5 million Nigerians jobs yearly, directly or indirectly, and this is approximately about 208,000 jobs every month. Many Nigerians will be eager to see how this pans out in the coming months. In Abuja for News Central, Marvelous Oboman.
Now, the Africa Youth Growth Foundation has called for more collaboration with rural communities, especially in the decision-making process of the country relating to achieving access to available and affordable health care for citizens. The foundation made the call during a press conference in Abuja to commemorate the 2024 World Malaria Day with the theme, Accelerate the Fight Against Malaria for a More Equitable World. The foundation also called on government to prioritize investment in the health sector and the implementation of malaria programs across the country in a bid to sustain the gains made towards the eradication of malaria in Nigeria.
Soliciting for buy-in that ensures sustainability after intervention. These interventions can be sustained when community members see the need and drive the cost, ownership, and transcending in improved results long after the intervention has ended. A large part of this country currently falls in the low-income category of living, making affordability of healthcare quite cumbersome. Therefore, a need to adopt universal health coverage, ensuring that all people have access to full range of healthcare as needed without financial restraints.
We now tell you that a major Togolese opposition movement has issued a rallying cry for citizens to turn out in force amidst growing tensions over a controversial constitutional reform. Activists from the National Alliance for Change urged the people of Togo to make their voices heard in the April 29 elections amidst a backdrop of deep political divisions. At the heart of the controversy is a disputed constitutional reform, which critics argue could prolong President Faure Gnassingbé's hold on power. Critics argue that this shift could potentially undermine the democratic process, concentrating power within the ruling union for the Republic Party led by President Gnassingbé. However, proponents of the reform contend that it will bolster Togo's democracy by decentralizing authority. Moving on now, people in the Matari slum district of Kenya's capital, Nairobi, have salvaged what is left of their belongings at their damaged mud-filled and sodden homes after the flash floods that killed at least 13 people. The residents who called on the government for help said they had lost hope and thought they were all going to die like others who were swept away by the floods.
Hali ilikuwa ya kutatanisha, hata tujui kuliendaje. Tulishtukia maji imejaa mpaka kwa mabati, tunashindwa tutaendea watu wapi. Wamama wamekufa, watoto wamepelekwa na maji, hatuna hata pa kuanzia na kumalizia. Naomba tu serikali ya Kenya itusaidie. Kwa sababu
hapa hii plot yote kuna watu walikuwa wanaishi hapa na kuna wanawake na watoto. Sasa tulikuwa wote kujua mabati huko. Na kile kitu tulikuwa tunafikiria sasa tu ni kwa sababu tulikuwa hakuna tumaini. Wenye walikuwa upande ile wakajaribu hata kupigia maofisa wa serikali watusaidie, hatukupata msaada. Sasa tulikuwa tumaini tu ilikuwa imeisha, tulikuwa tunaona kwamba tunakufa kama wengine ambao tulikuwa tunawakienda na maji.
Tangu nianze kuishi na Madare, nimekaa karibu mwaka naelekea 30. Sijawahi ona maji imefika hii kiwango imefika hii sasa. Sijawahi ona. Yeah. Na manake hii maji ujaa by the way, but ijawahi fika kwa hii kiwango imefika. Ambapo nimeshangaa sana.
But I'll tell you that the United Nations says a year of devastating war in Sudan has driven hundreds of farmers from their once bountiful lands, imperiling harvests and heightening the risk of famine. According to Saleh Abdulmajid, a farmer from Al Jazeera State, many farmers have been displaced with no prospect of returning. But even for those who remained on their land, the challenges are daunting, with some expressing difficulty in farming successfully due to a lack of water and fertilizer. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization's Director for Emergencies and Resilience, Ren Paulson, described it as a race against time with regards to the food security situation in the country.
That's been released recently as well that points to a situation continuing to be very, very concerning. From our perspective as a technical agency, we feel that it's urgent to act. The month of June is a key month for farmers to plant key crops for the year. So if we are going to mitigate and prevent a very, very serious situation from unfolding, it's urgent that we get as many of these supplies now into the hands of farmers as possible to allow them to produce. I mean, there are vulnerable households across the country, but obviously, if we think about the greater Darfur region, the greater Kordofan region, these are priority areas, but each one of the states...
Elsewhere, the United States has announced plans for a temporary withdrawal of troops from Chad. This announcement comes just days after the U.S. agreed to a full troop withdrawal from neighboring Niger Republic. According to the U.S. Pentagon Press Secretary, Major General Pat Ryder, the decision to reposition military forces from Chad comes amid ongoing diplomatic negotiations and recent developments in the region. Tensions escalated earlier this month when Chad's Air Force chief ordered the U.S. to halt activities at an air base near the capital in N'Djamena. Meanwhile, discussions with Niger's ruling military junta, the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland, are underway to facilitate the orderly and responsible withdrawal of U.S. forces from the country. In the meantime, the president of the military-led Chad has taken his campaign to the southern opposition stronghold of Mondo for a May presidential election is widely expected to win after his main rivals were ousted from the race. General Mahamat Idris Deby Itno seized the presidency in a 2021 coup after the death of his father, Idris Deby Itno, who had ruled the Sahel country with an iron fist for more than 3 decades. He had promised to hand power back to a civilian government within 18 months and told the African Union he would not stand for an election as president. But in March, he announced his candidacy for the presidency, and the same month, authorities banned 10 opposition candidates from running, just weeks after Itno's main rival, Yahya Dilejiru, was shot dead in an army assault on his PSF party headquarters.
Je suis un candidat, pas un simple candidat, mais un candidat solide. Je ne suis pas venu avec les mains vides, mes chers frères et sœurs. Je suis venu avec un projet de société pour les 5 prochaines années.
Now, as the South African elections draw closer, former President Thabo Mbeki has changed his views about the ANC he decampaigned a year ago. On Thursday, the former President Mbeki led a walkabout campaigning for the ruling party in Soweto, Johannesburg. A year ago, while speaking at a dialogue at the University of South Africa, Mbeki said he will not be campaigning for the ANC as he cannot tell people to vote a corrupt government. During his campaign on Thursday, Mbeki expressed his disappointment in the party, but emphasized that the ANC recognizes its own weakness and will change for the better. He also promised Soweto residents that the party will get rid of those who are corrupt. South Africa will be heading to the polls on May 29, 2024. From other continents, we tell you that China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi on Friday urged visiting U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to address rising disagreements or risk a downward spiral between the two powers after months of efforts to ease tensions. Blinken, paying his second visit to the rival country in less than a year, voiced hope for a progress, but said it would directly raise areas of difference which are expected to include Russia, Taiwan, and trade. China, in turn, has been infuriated by President Joe Biden's pressure on the economic front, which is unlikely to ease during an election year, including a sweeping ban on semiconductor exports and efforts to wrest blockbuster video app TikTok away from its Chinese owners. Away from that, the village of Satabaya in India's Odisha state now lies largely abandoned as its buildings are gradually claimed by the tide. Rising seas, driven by both climate change and upriver dams, have affected several coastal settlements in the state. Hundreds of Sabataya's displaced former residents have been officially recognized as climate migrants. Last year, the Odisha government announced funds for a resettlement colony 12 kilometers inland, but life for the new arrivals is tough.
ସବୁ ଭଲ ଥିଲା ସମୁଦ୍ର ବେଶୀ ଦୂର ଥିଲା ସେ ସମୁଦ୍ର ବେଶୀ ଦୂର ଥିଲା ସେଠକୁ ଏଠି ଚାଲିକି ରହିଲା ବେଳକୁ ଆଇଲା ହେଇଗଲେ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ସେ ସମୁଦ୍ର ବାସିକିରି ପଳେଇଲା ସେଥିପାଇଁ ବର୍ଷ ବନ୍ୟା ବାତ୍ୟା ଲାଗିଲାକୁ ସବୁ ଭଲ ଥିଲା ଘର ସବୁ ଭଲ ଥିଲା ବେଳକୁ ରାଗ ଦୁଃଖ ହେଉଛି ଘର ଭାଙ୍ଗିଲେ କୋଉଟେ ଥିବ କୋଉଟେ ଘର ଭାଙ୍ଗିଲେ ମଧ୍ୟ କ'ଣ କୋଉଟେ ଥିବ କୋଉଟେ କହୁନୁ କେମିତି ବଞ୍ଚିବ ଘର ତ ନାହିଁ କୋଉଟେ ରହିବ
By 2050, projection is that we are going to have 45% of the coast under erosion influence. So that means it was not there earlier, now it is on the path of increasing. Right. So global warming and
A bit of sports now. The Confederation of African Football has once again stated that the 15th edition of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, built for Morocco in 2024, will go ahead despite the dark clouds hovering over the staging of the competition this year. This news for the followers of the women's football across the continent was dropped on Thursday night by a top official of CAF, Lusolo September, head of television and broadcasting commercial, who was a guest on a cable television program. According to September, the final decision on the date of WAFCON 2024 and AFCON 2025, both built for Morocco, will be made in a few weeks by CAF hierarchy, adding that the crowded football schedules in 2024 have affected football competitions globally. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, we'll take a look at some of our top stories. Demolition of buildings on the path of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road begins on Saturday. UN says Sudan faces imminent famine as its ongoing war disrupts the farming season. We also told you that the United States has announced troop withdrawal from Chad on the heels of its exit from the Sahel region. You can send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV, and you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekon Onabanjo.